Josh, Tom, welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. Thanks for joining me, and I really appreciate you giving me your time this week.
Thank you for having us.
I think the obvious place to start is at the beginning. I'm really keen to understand it. Tom, I believe you got into the watch industry from like 16. So what took you in there? Where did the initial passion for watches kind of spark with you?
Well, it started as a teenager when I received a watch as a gift from my father. So that was sort of my first introduction to watches. It wasn't, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. It wasn't anything fancy. It was a Citizen Eco Drive, very simple but a very good watch. But I just fell in love with it, and it had lots of different complications. It had a world timer function, chronograph, all this sort of stuff, and I just loved fiddling with it. And then that was it. I ended up getting a job working part-time while I was studying at college for Tag Heuer,
Right.
having had an interest in watches, and then went against all my family's advice and said, you know what, I'm not going to go to university. I'm going to go and have a career in the watch industry. So sort of dove in head first, really.
What drove that? What point did you say, right, this education stuff's not for me?
Well, I was getting advice from one side from my mother, who was saying, and my dad wanted me to go and become a bloody stockbroker, which is great, but I'm not fantastic with numbers and maths, so I was probably going to be a little bit screwed from the start. But he really wanted me to do that, and my mum wanted me to go and study English. And to be honest, it was just a case of, well, this is something I'm actually passionate about. I really like watches. I enjoyed the mechanics of them, what goes into a watch, the craftsmanship, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, you know what, this really sings to me. This is something that I really want to learn more about. So yeah, I sacked off university, and then I went to go and work for a company called Berry's, who are probably the largest independent watch retailer and jeweler in the north of England. And got to work with some absolutely incredible brands. So Patek, Lang & Son, Vacheron,
Wow.
JLC, Richard Mille, Audemars Piguet, you name it. I was working with these incredible brands, and it just sort of, you can go down the high street and you'll see the everyday brands, and not the everyday brands, but the Rolexes, the Omegas, the Cartiers. But when you really start diving into the history of watchmaking, to be honest, I think I'm just a nerd, and I just
love it.
fell in love with it. And it was a similar story for Josh as well. I sold Josh a watch when you were 18. Yeah, so I sold Josh a watch when he was 18. He got interested in watches. I sold Josh an Omega. And then we sort of stayed in touch, interested in watches after that as well. But we went to school with each other, actually.
That was going to be my question. How did you just get to know each other? So it was just a connection from school. You bonded over a watch sale.
Yeah, if you can't tell, Josh is younger than me. So even though he looked 1 year, he had an easier paper round by the looks of things.
Yeah, Tom, I have to admit, it probably looks a bit more than that, but 50.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, there's only a year, but yeah, he looks after himself better than I do. We went to school with each other. He's the year below me at school, so obviously, a year below at school, you don't really talk to the younger years. It's just the way it goes. But after we'd left school, we stayed in touch. Josh wanted a watch, so we got speaking about that, and then I went to work to a number of other watch brands in the corporate side, so going into account management and that sort of thing, but found it rather limiting, to be honest, because you became very limited on the brands you could talk about, the watches you could enjoy. And to be honest, I sort of sat there and went, well, I can make more money by just buying watches that I like and selling them. And that's when I spoke to Josh, who was very good at media. And I said, I have this idea. I want to start selling watches, but you're much more handy with a camera than I am. So would you like to come on board? And it went from there.
I mean, is quite an interesting move there that you first thought on establishing this watch business and starting to trade and deal was, right, okay, social media presence, we have to get good at content, etc. And it's exactly how a lot of businesses are moved and scaled now, but it's to go there straight away is like, I need a partnership with someone who really gets that side of the business is a pretty shrewd first move, I would say.
Well, on social media, I'll let Josh speak about that. That is his domain. That's what he manages. He's the creative eye behind all of the content that we produce. But yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, I wasn't in a position to, go and open a shop and have a shop front and put watches in a window and all that sort of thing. So how are you going to promote the watches that you're buying and selling? Well, you have platforms, you can put them on Chrono or eBay, things like that, but you need to stand out. So social media is a massive tool for that. And to be honest, I think it's one of the, as we've said it many times before, but it's one of the main benefits that we have, that there's two of us, one person that can focus on the buying and selling of watches and one person that can solely focus on content, which I think that a lot of dealers in a similar sort of market to us can struggle with, to be honest, because if you're a one-man band, buying, selling, repairing, servicing watches, dealing with customers and producing content is a massively time-consuming process. So having someone that can solely focus on that really vital area is probably one of our biggest assets.
I've spoken about that a lot in previous podcasts with our business, that the fact that, Laurie and I started our business in the property sector. We went to school together. Similarly, we weren't friends at school. We kind of developed a friendship in our 20s. But the reason why our business works so well and has scaled as much as it does is because we both bring very different things to the table. And they say never get into business with friends. I think that's quite a limiting belief, because, it's all about the skill sets that you bring and how you interact together and how you work. And that can be massively powerful. I never imagine myself doing this myself, with the challenges that we have, the amount of workload that's on us, all the things that are going on a daily basis. It's so powerful to have someone that you can share that journey with, right? And when the dynamic's right, it's a perfect combination.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I understand, there's the logic of not going into business with friends is of the worry that it will damage the friendship. But at the end of the day, as long as you have a strong working relationship, we're not going to sit here and say that we always see eye to eye on every decision. But at the end of the day, we have our areas. Like I say, Josh is the media, I'm the buying and the selling and the watch side of it. And there's got to be a level of trust and reliability on the other person to be able to deliver in each area. So as long as, there's that strong working relationship there, then I don't really see it as a problem. And to be honest, if you can't leave your work at the door sometimes and focus on your friendship, then maybe that's a personal skill set problem more than a...
Not always told us not to go into a business with your friends. There are always people that don't have a business anyway.
Yeah.
It's always people like parents, friends, family, or people that have always just worked for someone else their whole life. So
I think even if you aren't friends to start with, the journey of entrepreneurship and building a business together, you spend so much time together, you go through so much together. It's such a journey that if there isn't an underlying friendship there, then, it's hard to see how it could work, So I've never really understood it. And, a few years down the line in our business, we brought Connor in, and he's now a full partner in everything that we do. And, he's 10 years younger than us. There wasn't an initial friendship, but, I'm probably closer to him now than I am to friends that I've known since I was 5, So, it's an interesting dynamic. And Josh, I understand that you were actually the first person to go full-time into the business when Watson Watches started. So tell me a little bit about that and what kind of pulled you into it so deep, so quick.
It was actually... we'd sort of planned it, really, knowing that we need to put the socials first in terms of who goes full-time first, because obviously that's our shop front. That's how we sell. And we'd always thought about it. It was actually Lewis, the third guy in the business. He's not with us today. He's just, he does the finance and things. So he's very behind the scenes. So not many people know about him until we speak about him on podcasts and things. I was actually living with him at the time. I was sharing his house with him, and I came in from work one day. I had a sales job very briefly after I left the Navy, and I hated it. It was awful. I was driving an hour away to an office every day, and it was just soul destroying. And he came in and he was like, "You really hate that job, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Sit down. I've got a plan." And he just explained how he could afford to do it. It'd be pretty lean to start with in terms of pay, but, take £400 or £500 less a month, but be really happy and grow and potentially increase how much you pay.
Huge potential for upside, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or you can slog it out of that job that you hate for a bit more. The business is being held back essentially whilst you do that. So it was a no-brainer, really. A scary one, but it was a no-brainer.
What did your kind of friends and family say? Because that's where the challenges usually come in, right?
Yeah, terrible idea. It's never going to work. You know, no one actually that I thought would be supportive was. Obviously, it went down like a lead balloon at the job I'd just got, the sales job. They weren't too enthusiastic about it either. My co-workers were saying, "What, you're just going to make videos on TikTok for a living?" And I was like, basically, yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show the mentality of people. It's like the first question everyone asked in that sales job, like we all had company cars and stuff. The first question they asked was like, "Well, if you leave here, what are you going to do about a car?" And that just goes to show the mentality of those kinds of jobs. So I'm not surprised people weren't receptive with it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And friends and family are always a difficult one, because they genuinely do have, more often than not, your best interests at heart. But, if most of your friends and family have only ever known safe, secure jobs and not been entrepreneurs and business owners, it's a really hard thing for them to get their head around. I always look back to my childhood, and my family is very working class. They would never have got on board with me starting my own business and growing it. And I'd been into my 30s, so, I was a lot more autonomous by that point. But I look at that versus, my partner's family. Her family are all entrepreneurs, have all got their own business. It's almost like a badge of honor in that family that you're starting your own business and you're trying to do something for yourself. But that just never would have been considered within even the environment I grew up. I didn't know any entrepreneurs or any business owners or anybody really putting themselves out there. It was just all get a job, go to university, get a job, get in at a 9 to 5 and try and progress up the corporate ladder. But as Tom said earlier, it doesn't, if you're good at what you do in your 20s, you can very quickly see the limitations of that. If I do well in the next 10 years, I might be able to take the next step up the ladder, which is an extra 10 grand a year after tax. It's maybe 5. It becomes incredibly limited, and that's ultimately where I got to my 30s. So I said, look, this can only go so far in a corporate career.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree.
Brave move, but, I understand why you did it. So talk to me about the early days of business. You're obviously focused very heavily on social media, building the brand. When did the business officially start? We're talking kind of post-COVID?
So the idea for What's on Watches was something that I pretty much had for a long time, but it was always a case of, again, like you said, you're on the corporate ladder, you're going, if I take this step, I'm going to be throwing away my career, all that sort of stuff. So it's always that niggling thought in the back of your mind. And it was actually, I found out I was going to be a father on my 23rd birthday, which was quite a birthday surprise. Wasn't part of the master plan, but a happy miracle, we'll call it. And it was at that moment that I said, okay, if you don't do this now, you never will, because there'll never be a right time. We've spoke about this. There's never the right time to take this sort of step. There's always going to be a reason why you shouldn't. But yeah, it was 2021, and then it was Christmas 2021 actually. And granted, I'd had a couple of drinks in an afternoon.
A bit of lubrication.
A bit of Dutch courage, we'll call it. And I sat there and went, sod it, right, okay, I'm doing it. So set up the business, secured the brand name, all that sort of stuff. And then it was, okay, that's that done. How the hell do you do it next? So there was a bit of planning and a little bit of strategic thought. And then obviously, like I mentioned, so 2022, it was March 2022 that I said to Josh, let's sit down, let's share a drink and let's talk about this plan. And it was actually the 20th of March 2022, because the day we were meant to sit down and have a drink, my daughter was born. So I got slightly delayed, but a week later, Josh and I sat down and said, okay, how should we do this? And it was actually you that said to me, because I was talking about all these ideas, and Josh said, start now, be perfect later. And I was like, pretty solid advice, actually. So that was it, yeah. So we sat down, we bought some watches. We said we bought 4.
That's actually one of the things you said. Is like, what do we do next? Like, well, I guess we buy some more.
Yeah. So we bought
solid start.
We bought 4 Rolexes. Yeah, we bought 4.
12 grand.
Yeah, 4 of the older manual wind 6694, 6426, Oyster Precisions, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Stuff that we both liked. You, Dad, obviously had a little bit of experience with the 6427 as your first Rolex. But great value pieces that, you know, is a great place to start a collection. And that was it. We bought them. We started making content with them. They sold, and it just snowballed from there. And then so that was pretty much the first stock offering was June 2022. We made content throughout April and May. And we were just grabbing any watch we could, really, wouldn't we? We were going here, there, and everywhere just to find watches to film with, personal watches, working with some of the jewelers that I knew through my day job, and just saying, listen, can we come in? Can we film some content? And then it came time to put the money on the table and take the dive. And thankfully, it worked. But we've never looked back.
What usually becomes part of the kind of folklore of any company starting is like your first deal. You know, Laurie and I still talk about the first property deal we did together as like, you know, a milestone moment. Do you remember the specifics in your first deal? Is it something that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, very well. It was actually quite a scary experience, but not in the way that you'd think, because Josh was still in the Navy at this point, weren't you? And one of your friends had mentioned that he was after a 6426 Oyster Precision, and found him one, and he was like, yeah, perfect, great, I'll buy it. And I remember I was actually laid in bed with my newborn daughter, who was, I don't even think she was a month old, maybe, God knows. And he rang me and he screamed. And when I say he screamed, I mean, I thought I was getting like he was being murdered while he was on the phone, and this was like the last time I was ever going to hear from him. And it turns out that, yeah, he said, right, he sent the wire, we sorted the watch, we did it. And then we drove down from where we're based in Leeds to Portsmouth, and we said, right, the first watch we sell, we'll go and hand deliver it. By chance, he was at the very bottom of the country. So it was, you did all right out of it, because I got free lift to work. Yeah, I drove down and dropped him off in Portsmouth where he was based for the Navy.
So it was ideally was straight to the Navy. So great.
Yeah,
great.
And we delivered the watch, and then I had to have the long drive back. But it was, we remember it very well. And then, we've gone on to sell. A lot of your friends have bought watches from us, actually. So many of running out of friends to sell watches to, which is
it's just I guess it makes such an indelible mark on you, because it's proof of concept, right? When you see, right, we can do this stuff works, and it's always a really big milestone for any business. So, talk to me about the sort of watches that kind of excite you. With, you know, you're very much in the vintage market.
Yeah.
The business also strikes me as something that could be quite capital intensive, because you spoke about the fact that, you know, the business started, you bought your first kind of 4 watches. You know, you have to put the cash out to do that, to then realise, so you've got cash tied up in stock, and I guess as the watches get more expensive, the cash requirements get more expensive. Is that a challenge of the business? Is there ways to deal with the finance and all that? You know, do you get a lot of consignment stuff?
Well, in terms of the product focus, from the first part of your question, we have a strong focus in vintage watches. So pretty much 1950s into neo vintage to early 2000s. That being said, you know, we've helped many clients buy. We're not overly, like, if somebody came to me and said, I want a 2024 Submariner, we're not going to say, oh no, that's not for us. We facilitate, and we have facilitated many clients to have vintage watch collections and modern watch collections, but what we stock is very much reflective of Josh and I's tastes. Yeah. We have a passion for vintage watches, and So what we stock is basically watches that we like. That has pretty much been the way that we've worked it. So in terms of the capital, it is, this business is built on it. It's which probably isn't unique, but cash flow is hugely important because there is huge outlays. At the end of the day, if you buy you've got to buy the watch. We do get consignment offers. It's something that we did a lot of at the start when we started out. So a lot of the heavier pieces that we had at the start were consigned by clients that we'd worked with. But these days, pretty much every watch on our website is what we own. Yeah. And cash flow is a huge part of it. And I think that is something to be said with vintage, which people don't appreciate, is we don't just buy a watch, take a photograph, and sell the watch. There is process before that. There's authentication, there's servicing, there's making sure it's retail ready. There's lots of steps and process. So there can be times where we might have 40 watches, but there'll only be 10 on the website because 30 are away getting serviced. So there is a huge capital outlay required. And I know that a lot of dealers do work on consignment, and I understand why, because you're not then risking your own capital. But we're not completely against that. But what we find is we take a huge amount of pride in our product. And when we take pride in that, we need to make sure that the product's to our standards. And to be there, we need to, service it, do all these sort of things. So trying to explain that to a client where, we can receive your watch, but if it is not of an acceptable standard, there's going to have to be an outlay of money to be able to get it retail ready. So we like to be in control of our own products. We like to stand on our own products. So that's why, I'd say 95% of the watches that we sell belong to us.
And I guess that feeds back into the fact that, social media is a big part of that, and the videos and content that you guys put out there, it is, it's driving the interest, it's driving sales, and ultimately it has to be driven by the passion that you have for the product that you're selling, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What's the key social media strategy with What's on Watches?
I would say definitely trying to tell a little bit of a story about each watch. Vintage watches, it's a romanticism thing. In terms of a vintage Seamaster versus a modern Seamaster, it's objectively not as good a watch. It won't be as precise. It won't be able to go as deep. It won't be able to go in water at all, unless you want to start changing gaskets and things around, and it becomes like Trigger's broom. But it's the same reason people buy classic cars. I find you don't buy it because it's the best car. There's just something about it that attracts you to it. There's a nostalgia. There's, like I say, a romanticism about it. And I think if you can tell a story about each watch you're selling, you're way more likely to sell it, because it taps into people's emotions. And I'd say the strategy is very much emotional selling. Think about this watch from the 1950s. What has it seen? Has it ever been on anyone's wrist in a wedding? Was it there at someone's birth? Was it there at someone's death? And how are you, as the new owner, going to carry on this watch's legacy? Because I think everyone's got one special watch. It might not be expensive, but it might just be something someone gave to you. And for some reason, you become attached to it. And it's one of the few objects in modern day where we do have that attachment, and it's not consumable. Like, if you think about how many things we throw away, or a new iPhone comes out, we get a new one. A new computer comes out, we get a new one. We buy new clothes all the time. But
it's getting harder and harder to connect to have an emotional connection with items, because they're just so consumable just now. This was an argument that Rory Sutherland made. I had him on the podcast, the big marketing guy, and he was talking about the fact that, over the last 40, 50 years, the cost of goods has got so ridiculously cheap in monetary terms based on inflation. Things have got so cheap. Your average consumable items got so ridiculously cheap that generally there's not a lot of difference between, for example, the iPhone that Elon Musk has and the iPhone that I have. There's very little difference there because they're all readily available to the masses. But a lot of the benefit we've received from that has been lost due to, like property price increases and the fact that people have got a huge amount more money going out to rent or mortgages, etc. We've lost a lot of benefit, but actually we've also lost a lot of connection to items, to to day-to-day things because they're just so consumable, so throwaway. You know, a watch is just, it's not a logical thing, you know, it's not something that anybody needs. You know, everybody's phone has a clock on it now. It's much more about, you know, emotional connection. And that's what really interests me about this type of business. In fact, any type of business really that's in the collectibles market is, you know, there's so much more potential to drive profitability and growth of a business when it's driven by emotions, you know, when it has an underlying emotion. And it really is incredible when you see some of the numbers that some of these watches are going for, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to take the mick on price, but again, one of the things on vintage watches is the prices can be very objective on them, because you may not find another one, or most commonly what we find is you won't find another one in that condition, and that's maybe why it's worth an extra 200, 300, 400, sometimes thousands of pounds, is because, yeah, there might be 5 of them, but this one is near pristine. And how rare is that for an object that's 30, 40, 50 years old?
Yeah. For anyone that's thinking about starting to invest in watches, you know, and you know, we're not talking about serious amounts of money, we're talking about kind of lower level. Is there anything that you would recommend in terms of a brand or a specific watch that's a good kind of entry level investment opportunity?
In terms of viewing watches as investments, we have this conversation with clients a lot, and I don't like, and as a business, we don't like to use the term investing when purchasing watches. Like you said, it's an emotional purchase. It's a strong emotional purchase, and emotions and investments sometimes don't go hand in hand, as we know. So if you are looking at getting into watches, the best piece of advice, and I know it sounds very easy to say, but you'll never regret it if you do, is buy what you like. Because if you buy what you like and you actually enjoy it, then you're never going to lose money because you're never going to let it go. Now, obviously, in terms of investments in a broad term, the brand that always comes to people's mind is Rolex. However, my advice to people is when investing in a Rolex, if you're not planning to hold that for the long term and you are simply buying it as a store of wealth or as an asset, look elsewhere first. Because COVID, yeah, exactly. And people, I think a lot of people got into watches during, like you said, 2020 into 2021, when a lot of disposable income was flying around and a lot of people were sat at home, not going on holidays, not able to go out. Money's building up in the background. What should I get into? There's a Rolex available. And you found absolutely crazy situations where watches that were pre-COVID were £20,000 were suddenly being thrown around for £50,000. Now, yeah, as an investment person, you've got to look at that and say, is that a bubble or is that actually what it's worth? And those people that got into it during them times who are now the market has softened. We're not going to sit here and say everything is rosy and dandy and absolutely fine. The market has softened. There is the prices that we saw during them areas are not here right now. And those people who bought during that peak, if you're coming to sell now and viewing it as an investment, it's going to be a harsh reality. And there's a lot of content going around on this where people are saying, I've just got a phone call from the AD, I've been offered a Rolex Explorer. What can you give me for it? Well, it's going to be under list because they're now available. So I know that sounds like I'm sorry. Yeah, well, in terms of the modern market, there's a lot more hot hands in the market, means that there's a lot more fluctuation in prices. Vintage, we find personally, is a more stable asset, if you want to call it an asset. The prices of that product is, if you're buying a watch that's been around for 40 years, there's a lot more data behind that as to what that watch is actually worth. Now, of course, you do see peaks and troughs, but it's proven itself for longer. It's, a date just, and as a prime example, one of our best-selling watches is a 36mm date just. It's a great gents watch. Some women wear it as well. But the prices of them haven't really changed that much during the highs and the lows. and that's because they've been around for so long, and we're not going to sit here and call them rare. So they've proven themselves. So if you actually, the best piece of advice, if you actually want to view it as investments, is don't look at the crazy stuff because they fluctuate massively. Build a solid collection of Datejusts, Air Kings. Yeah, they might not be, in your mind, if you're into the hype pieces, the most exciting, but they're the most stable, 100%. Because, again, the prices that they were 3 years ago is pretty consistent with what they are today, which I know is probably going to annoy a lot of people saying they're not investments, but from our perspective, they're not.
True investments, you have to outlay a lot of capital in, like investments that are really worth doing in terms of you're actually going to see a really worthwhile return. Are watches that you're going to be going to Monaco to auction events for, and you're going to be paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for.
Serious amounts of outlay. Yeah. I go back to something you mentioned kind of briefly there is, obviously the business started in 2001. There was a massive boom in sort of the watch market and prices going crazy during COVID. Was that something that made you a little bit nervous coming at 2021 and seeing those prices roll back, or you were a bit more comfortable because you were firmly within the vintage watch market and hadn't been so erratic?
I think we were definitely more comfortable because we was in the vintage watch market. Like we were cautious, we were viewing it, but at the same time we were viewing it from the perspective of being at distance from it because it wasn't the stuff we was selling. Like I remember in the early days we'd speak to people who were selling a bit of everything, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's been tough for me this month. Like whatever, I've done this, I've done that," and we were like, "Really?" Like because obviously we just started, we were seeing progression every month, and it wasn't correlating with what those guys were seeing who were selling modern stuff. So, I mean, we were definitely cautious of it, but I like I said, we viewed it from a distance and it didn't really line up with what we were seeing, but that's because we were selling different things.
Sure. We mentioned kind of briefly there about Rolex. It kind of probably is the biggest known brand when it comes to anybody that's not in watches understanding, okay, that's a luxury and premium watch. It's also one of the most unique business models ever. You kind of feel like the guys have nailed it when it comes to creating a luxury brand where, even the company itself is set up through a trust and, charity, which really don't understand the fundamentals of how the tax system's working on that and who's benefiting. But, from the lists you need to sit on to try and get a watch, and, you've got all these boutiques everywhere you go in and you can't actually buy a watch. They've done an incredible job of creating this, brand prestige, even down to the sort of sponsorship they're associated with. Then you're never going to see them sponsoring a football team because that's not their market. They're at the Formula One or they're at the golf, or it's an incredible brand they've created. Is there any
go on for much longer though, are they?
Yeah,
Tag Heuer are going to be doing that, which makes sense. They arguably got more motor heritage than Rolex.
Yeah. Is there any watch brands out there though that you guys won't touch?
We're very diplomatic.
We have to be very diplomatic, in all honesty. Yeah, we do. We have to, which is, I don't like sitting on the fence, and I can be known for being quite opinionated, but we'll try not to be today.
Someone asks for it, we'd probably say.
Yeah, listen, if
stocking it.
Yeah, exactly. We get a lot of requests from people who, it might not be a watch that we love, but at the end of the day, we're a business that buys, sells, and sources watches. So if somebody comes to us and says, "I want this Ebel," if it's a watch off the top of my head, which might be a little bit more niche, I'm gonna do everything in my power to find that watch for that person, because it doesn't matter what I think. Again, buy what you like, and if you like that watch, then absolutely, let's see what we can do for you, and let's see what we can do in terms of what we stock on the website. I don't think you'll catch us stocking Hublots anytime soon, for example. But and so Christopher Ward is. I don't think we'd stock them, but I don't hold them in the same.
No, they're not in the same regard.
No, but it's not. Yeah, look at us playing with the table. Be careful who we offend. Yeah, you
awkward,
won't.
uncomfortable chat.
Yeah, you won't catch us stocking Hublot anytime soon. Put it that way.
And is that a fundamental issue with the quality or the company, or what's?
Yeah, I mean LVMH. I used to work for them. I think they're a great company. I just personally, and I'm sure you'll agree, that the price tag does in no way reflect the quality. And I know it's a very well documented thing in the watch world these days that Hublot is incredibly expensive for what you get, and there is other brands that for. Oh yeah, you can really argue that point. If a lot of people, you've set up a great point there. A lot of people come to us and ask for Rolex because they think Rolex is the best brand in the world. Like there's nothing else that could ever compare to a Rolex. That is strictly not true. They make fantastic watches. They make iconic watches, but they are, compared to a lot of other manufacturers, a mass market product. They produce millions of watches a year, and a lot of them are just machine finished, granted, mostly reliable, but they were never designed to be a watch brand that is on the cutting edge of design that you've never seen before, offering complications that have never been mastered. There's plenty of other brands out there pushing that envelope, and the ones that we're huge fans of, JLC, Vacheron, Patek, Lange, all these other brands that are on, in no way of looking at it, is a better watch than what Rolex is, which again might upset a few people.
And you can't upset them that much, because I said that I'm wearing a Rolex.
As am I. So clearly we are just, again, they make iconic watches though, 100%.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But don't get into an argument swearing that your Rolex is better than someone's FP Jean.
Yeah, you're going to lose.
I think when you can get a watch that has a design that stands the test of time, there's a lot to be said for that,
And that is something that Rolex have mastered 100%. You only have to look through their catalogue now. Datejust, Submariners, Day Dates, all of these pieces that have been around for decades. And the designs, granted, they have changed slightly, and materials and finishing has improved, sizes change, but the design element of what is that core collection has remained the same throughout its entire life, and that's because it's iconic. And a lot of people, take the Submariner for example. I'm wearing one today. They're fantastic watches. They say you'll see another dive watch and go, "Oh, that just looks like a Submariner." Well, actually, if you go back to the history books, the Submariner wasn't ever even the first ever dive watch. There was other watches before that had dive watch heritage that Rolex took inspiration from. But it is an iconic watch, and you can't argue that.
No. Do you think, it seemed like a few years ago things were moving towards kind of watches that were a bit bigger and bolder, and now the watch face size seem to be kind of edging backwards? Do you think there's a movement now to them going back to smaller watches?
Which is a message we are firmly behind.
Behind you.
It's
much more in line with the vintage thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And we've noticed that a lot in the markets that we sell to. We've seen a lot more, let's call them young people without sounding patronising, but that sub-30 age bracket coming to us and asking for watches that 5, 6, 7 years ago, you go, that's tiny, that looks like a woman's watch. But we don't have that anymore. For Cartier Tank being a prime example of that, it's one of our best sellers. And the size that we sell most commonly is the 23.5 by 30.5, which is the traditional gent size, which on paper for modern watches is rather small. But yeah, the big watch craze, there's still brands that are appealing to people that want the 44, 45 and above. Panerai and Invicta, yeah, they're still out there supplying to that market. But more elegant, dressy watches are definitely coming back onto the scene, and that's something that we are really happy about. Again, it aligns with our tastes, and we've seen it again from the likes of Tudor is always the one that I always go to, with a couple of their launches being sub 40 mil in the divers watches category. JLC, with the Tribute Reverso, have taken that back to the original size and done it in a more gents-focused piece, and it's beautiful, and it's a really classy watch. So yeah, we're happy that smaller watches are definitely making a return.
What do you think about the likes of Jacobs and Co? It's hard to move on Instagram without seeing images of Jacobs and Co watches, or watch the owner design a watch and then you see it live and Cristiano Ronaldo's wearing it. What do you think about those types of watches?
Watches for a very specific market, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I'll let you talk.
You can't deny that when you look at a Jacob & Co watch, that there is a solid amount of impressive work that goes into making the watch like that. But as we've just spoke about, they're massive. They're extremely expensive. They're very gaudy. You're not going to walk down the street and people, and they're going to notice it. And I don't see, I'm not saying this is factual, but I don't see many real watch enthusiasts or people who are known for their immaculate taste and collections collecting Jacob & Co. Whereas we see people that maybe don't have a watch collection, or you could label under more money than sense, perhaps, wearing Jacob & Co. And that's fine. I'm probably never going to own one. Could I buy one right now? No. So maybe I'm a hater on them. Maybe if I became a billionaire tomorrow, I'd start stacking my watch box full of them. But right now, it's not something that we're too passionate about, is it? Not even remotely.
No.
They're not for us, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find many watch collectors who would be enthusiastic about them as well.
Just
what?
Sorry, go
all I was going to say is, what do you see as the sort of next step for What's on Watches? What's the plan over the next sort of 12, 24 months? Where do you see the business growing, and what are your plans for the future?
I think that our plans for the future is we've experimented in many fields over the last couple of months, and actually the last couple of years. We put quite a focus onto YouTube in producing content. We've experimented with different products as well, which has been an enjoyable experience. Finding different things that we can enjoy and working with different sorts of clients. Our long-term ambition, and which again is a bold claim, but we do wish to become one of the largest vintage watch dealers and one of the largest watch dealerships in the UK. That is our long-term plan. It's always good to be ambitious, aim for the stars and all that. But we think we have the capacity to do that. Compared to a lot of other people, we really didn't start with a lot. And I know that might sound, we bought 4 Rolexes at the start, and everyone goes, "Oh, you started with something then." Absolutely. But that was hard-earned cash that we put into that. We weren't getting handouts. We took a risk, and thankfully the risk has worked. So we don't have £100 million sat in a bank account to go and buy every single watch on the planet to facilitate every single sort of client. But we do want to be able to become a staple of quality, of if you are looking for a watch, this is the guys you want to go to. These guys have got a good reputation of exceptional quality. So that is the long-term plan. For the next 24 months, it's keep on doing what we're doing, in all honesty, and keep on growing. We've still got a lot of work to do. Every day is max effort, max pressure, getting content out there, finding watches, working with clients, networking, all these sort of things. So it's a real nose to the ground experience at the minute, and I don't want people to think that we just flounder around. There is enjoyable days and there is non-enjoyable days, but the key thing for the next 24 months is keep bloody working, and that's what I do.
What interests me is, we obviously with any business, cash flow, working capital is always a big part. The limitations on growth and how quickly you can go. But even with unlimited working capital comes other interesting I guess thoughts with this type of business, because if you're at the sort of 10 to 20 grand watch mark, do you do more 10 to 20 grand watches, or do you take a step to the next level of 50, 60 grand watches, where it's a different clientele ultimately? With even big step up, it's like, okay, well, do we have the clientele, or are we creating a new clientele market that we need to target? So it's an interesting, I guess, dilemma for you guys to consider when you're growing, right?
100%. And a key way that we look at that is by analysing, again, through the work that Josh does on socials, is what is our target market? What is our age demographic? Who's watching our content? And if they are watching our content, going through the analytics on the website, where are they going when they come onto the website? What products are they looking at? So we actually do put quite a bit of strategy into that and say, okay, we're having a huge spike of interest in Cartier at the moment, so let's offer some more Cartier. Or we're having a huge ingest into Datejust at the minute, so we'll continue to push Datejust. In terms of moving up the price categories, again, this is things that can come with time. Of course, we're not going to sit here and pretend that we don't want to sell ultra rare, 4-digit Daytonas and really enjoy that and supplying that to our clientele. But, we could go do that tomorrow, but then all of a sudden we go from having 40 watches in stock to 4, 5 watches, and all of a sudden it's, oh, okay, what do we do now then? Are we just going to wait for them to sell, or do we keep on pushing them? So we try and be proactive in terms of the product that we're doing, but we have to respond to what our clients want as well, and it's knowing what our clients want before they know it themselves, really. So if they start looking at Cartier, show them interest in Cartiers and build that market. But the long-term strategy is to become, no matter what watch you're looking for, we can help and we want to supply that to you. And I know that's a big ask, but I think if we keep on the trajectory, we will get there.
Do you think, or do you see a physical location becoming part of that plan, or you don't think it's necessary now with sort of the online presence?
I don't think it's necessary, but I think it'd be a nice to have eventually. When you start applying money into a physical location, it's money that you're potentially not really going to see a return on like you would the watches. Yeah, you might get some more people in, you might get some credibility. But to be honest, so many people are buying watches online, and that's been one of the massive shifts in the watch industry. And I think that's due to the content, so the rise in video content that's come out. You can get a real good feel for it. And also people sort of wising up to the tricks and games that ADs will play with you, and they just haven't got patience for it. I mean, we had an office in Leeds for a while, but we didn't really see the point in continuing outlaying the cash.
Yeah.
When it didn't really, I mean, it probably did some months, but it didn't have as much of an impact because people were still just buying watches from America and Saudi and places like that, and we were just sat there in the UK, and it didn't make too much of a difference to our business model.
How do you, given the method of operation, a lot of this stuff being online, how do you inspire the trust within people that the checks are done to make sure that watches are fake, and that they're to a standard, and that they're they've got a really solid product at the end of the day? Yeah,
trust is a huge part of it, and building that reputation of trust is something that we put a huge focus on. We have, thankfully, a selection of very, very talented watchmakers who not only service the watches for us, but authenticate every single component that goes into that watch to make sure it is original and factory standard. So that is, and we supply a warranty with every watch that we sell. So you're not just buying from us, going away, and that's it. You're never going to hear from us again. We supply a warranty to give the customer peace of mind. But just linking briefly to the previous question as well, we offer the facility to clients, and this is something that we will do in the long run, is we might not have a shop front where we'll have all the watches in, but we do want to give every customer that buys from us a really positive experience. So we always offer to, if you want to come and see a watch and you want to come and try the watch on, you want to inspect it yourself, you want to, get a second opinion, absolutely, we will offer that. You can come and meet us and we'll give you a really enjoyable experience. So in terms of, like you said before, I don't think we maybe a shop front, maybe in the future, who knows? But I think in the next 5 to 10 years is creating a space where a customer can come and have a wow experience, where they can sit down and they can remember, because it is, like I said, an emotional purchase. So collecting that product is very emotional as well, and you always remember it. It's something that I've noticed through years in the watch industry, is how many times do you say to someone, oh, I like your watch, and they tell you where they were and why they bought it, and they always talk about that experience. So we want to give people that experience as well. So I think having a really nice environment, which is very on brand with dark wood and maybe a little humidor to enjoy a cigar and have that experience, is something that we want to do. But yeah, our door is always open. If someone says, I'm really interested in this watch, can I see it? Absolutely.
Excuse for a pint as well.
I don't drink anymore. Yeah, it's been about 24 hours.
Well done.
So yeah, no, we want to make sure that everybody can sit there and say, oh yeah, I bought it in this place. I had a really wonderful time. I was celebrating this, and we want people to hopefully associate us with that memory. So that is something we'll definitely be working on and continuing for the next few years.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like it'd be a great experience, and it makes complete sense to me from a business perspective. Is it, you talked about the authentication process. That sounds like an expensive process to all part of watch to make sure it's all. Is it? Yeah, and
yeah, 100%.
With that in mind, I guess comes into managing margins from buying and selling a watch, when you have to go through all this process to be able to provide a warranty at the back end of it. Right.
I think that is something that is very important, and a lot of people forget. You may come to us with a 40-year-old watch and say, I want to sell this, and we'll make you an offer on it. And they'll go, oh, well, I've seen it on eBay for this. Okay, well, let me explain to you how this works. Well, first of all, we're a business, which means that you want the convenience of the sale, so we'll supply you with the convenience by giving you money today for your watch. But please also take into consideration that you've not had it serviced for 20 years, so it's going to need work. It needs it for the next custodian. It's going to need money put into it. Servicing and authentication is not a cheap process. It's not, and it is a huge part of something we have to consider during the buying and selling process, which again is an argument that I've had with modern dealers, which I completely understand, where they say, oh, if I buy a 2024 Submariner, I just need to get it authenticated, then I can sell it. And I'm like, great point. Yeah, you don't have the massive service outlays, but we do. But that is you can't have it all. You can't have your cake and eat it. And we want to be vintage specialists, and we want to have these watches carry on for the next generations as well. So if they're going to carry on, we need to make sure that they're running and well looked after. So if we have to bite that bullet, then so be it. We say that now when we get the repair bills from the watchmaker. We do sometimes quince, but salivate.
Is there any particular incident with a watch that you bought that's become a bit of a disaster that still sticks in your head?
We've been relatively fortunate. We have it, like I say, a very, very strict.
Oh no,
there was the
Camaro.
Oh yeah, there was the Camaro.
I think our watchmaker actually fashioned the part for.
Yeah, it was a very, very old Hoya Camaro, and the parts were not readily available, and it unfortunately had received a very tough life, water damage, that sort of thing. So to bring it back to even a livable standard, I think that was away for nearly 1.5 years getting repaired, and that was tough. It was a resto mod, yeah, and we don't really like to do that, unfortunately, but on that situation we had to. But
he was honest and transparent about it.
Yeah. And yeah, we always be transparent with your client, tell them exactly. Like, we have a Tudor Monte Carlo at the moment, which is a beautiful watch, and that had lived a life, and we bought it from the son of the original owner. The father had passed away, and he was like, listen, it's been worn, but he wore this every single day for 40 years. Yeah, still not judging him. I still can't believe he bloody sold it, but that's by the by. But yeah, we had to find period correct parts for that watch to be able to bring it back to life. But it was a case of, does that end up getting thrown in a bin because it doesn't work anymore, or do we bring it back to life? And we said giving it a new lease of life and finding it a new owner is a much nicer thing to do when it carries that many memories. But yeah, in terms of, we've never sold a fake. We've had them put on our desk before and people try their luck, but they've never succeeded, and they've been told to.
That's not a challenge.
It's not a challenge now, and you won't get away with it. How that seems.
Were those instances where they knew it was a fake? Because obviously the worst scenario is where they come thinking it's genuine and the reality is fake.
We've had both. We've had people that are chancing their luck to try and squeeze you out of a few pounds, and then you've had people that have gone away to have some very, very difficult conversations with people. But yeah, we've been very lucky so far, and obviously, like I say, we've got a very talented team who can spot these things from a mile off, so that's good.
Do you think it's maybe not so much in the vintage market, but maybe in the new watch market? Do you think it's getting harder to tell the difference between the fakes and the authentic?
100%. Yeah, I'm never going to sit here and say, oh, it's incredibly challenging. The fake market, particularly again on modern, but again, there's a lot of situations in vintage where things have been put together and aren't right and are baked in an oven, which sounds crazy, but to add patina and these sort of things, there's been a lot of that. But modern fake watches, or clones as they are referred to, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you can always tell. You need to have experience. You need to know what you're looking at, because there'll be minor differences. There are very, very minor differences where, yeah, you can. There is situations where you can have a genuine dial, a genuine bezel, a genuine case, and a genuine bracelet, and 99.9% genuine parts, but there's things in there that aren't genuine, and it has been manufactured. So you've got to be very, very careful, and that's why we need highly qualified and trained watchmakers working for us to be able to catch these situations out.
Yeah, massive market, the black market for fake watches. So you can understand how people a time and effort in trying to replicate them. And just in my head, when I think about more modern watches becoming, less handmade, more manufactured, as things become more manufactured, they become easier to replicate, right? So,
yeah, well, 100%. Yeah, and people spend a lot of money on these fake watches. You're not buying. It's always the joke in it. Oh, did you buy it down the beach for 50 quid? No, people aren't doing that. People are spending thousands on clone watches to be able to, it might be a 20 grand watch second hand, so they'll spend £2,000 on a clone watch, and then they'll spend money on genuine components to make it look even more realistic. So you've got to have your wits about you. It can be scary, but that's why you have a good team behind you to assist with that process.
All part of the process.
Yeah.
Tom and Josh, it's been a pleasure to speak to you and learn a bit more about watches. I've really enjoyed this chat. I always end the podcast with the same question, so I guess I'll ask it to each of you individually. But what does real wealth mean to you, and more specifically, the kind of objectives and plans from everything you're doing within the business? What are you personally looking to achieve kind of in the future? What is the result of it?
I think for me, one of the most important things about achieving real wealth, is having time on your hands, having the power to, do things that you need to do or want to do when you want to do it. And that often comes from not working for someone else. But I think one of the long-term goals of this business, and another key aspect to real wealth, is to be financially secure, but also in a smart way of that money is going to grow and continue. And hopefully you end up with enough of it to be able to hopefully look after friends and family when you're older, or maybe when you've passed away. So for me, real wealth is mainly about time. Obviously, of course,
excuse the pun.
Yeah.
For me, it's similar but slightly different, because again, Josh and I are in different stages of our life. But real wealth for me is working incredibly hard so that my daughter can have a future that she can do what she wants and be supported throughout all of it with no limitations, which is my main driving force these days, which is quite nice, because it's nice to have something that's more important than yourself.
It is massively, and it's interesting that the kind of switch for you to entrepreneurship fully came when your daughter came in, and that's it's no mean feat, actually, because my kids are kind of 2 and 4, and our business started about the same time. It's my eldest son was born. It's a scary place to be. You'll go out on your own whilst you've got young children. But everything we do was always about generational wealth. So, you know, I fully get what you guys are talking about. I'm now at the stage where I'm kind of pondering quite a lot of, you know, how you make their life comfortable without making it purposeless, you know, without giving them that drive and purpose and, you know, meaning around creation, you know, because if you're not creating as things are comfortable, you know, what kind of person does it leave you with? And you see so many stories of, you know, generational wealth eroded within the first generation, and then, you know, you're a couple of generations down the line before they start making it back and all that. So
she'll be haunted from the grave if she does that, just to make you aware.
Yeah.
She
just make sure.
I work all my life for her to go blow it on in Vegas in a weekend, then trust me, I'll be stalking her from the grave. But yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying. I don't want her to grow up to be, with lack of a better phrase, a spoiled child. I don't want her to do that, and I promise you she isn't. She's not right now anyway. But I don't want it to spoil her, but I want her to be able to say, this is something I want to achieve with my life, and if I can support that dream, then that's the greatest gift, isn't it? To be able,
that's an incredible place to be.
Yeah, that's where I would like to be. You know, if she turns to me in 30 years and says, I'd love to sell watches, I'd say, well, I don't want you to get the title of a Nepo baby, but hopefully we could help you somewhere along the way with that.
Sort that out, yeah.
Yeah. But so that's real wealth for me, is building a future for her, and then hopefully building a future for her children. And and very much like Josh said, is absolute security and freedom to be able to enjoy life, really, you know, and enjoying my life is making sure that she's happy. So
excellent. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you, and I'm really excited to see where Watts on Watches goes in the future.
Massive thank you for your time, and thank you for having us on. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.